Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Diverse Voices First Generation Alumni Panel. My name's Georgina and I use she, her pronouns, and I work within the careers team here at Edge Hill University. We've got some of you joining us on Teams today, and we've got some of you joining us on campus for a live stream that's in the Willow Room in Catalyst, so welcome to you all. Before I hand over to our host for the event to begin, I'll just quickly run over some housekeeping bits. So this event is being recorded, and if you're not comfortable with your name and your thumbnail potentially appearing on that recording, please leave the meeting now. You will still be able to watch the event back when it becomes available later in the week. Please do ensure that you keep your cameras and your microphones turned off during the event. The chat feature is enabled if you've got any questions or comments, and that's going to be monitored by our host throughout the event. If you are joining us on campus, then Alex will pop those questions or comments into the chat for you. I think that's everything from myself for now, so I'm going to hand over to the fantastic host for today, Chris Leach, who's going to start our event for us.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful panel. I'm going to be hosting for you today. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here on behalf of the careers team. This is my second panel now, so clearly there was no one better. Now, half of you will think that's a self-deprecating joke. The other half will think Chris is at his Weetabix today. Who knows who's correct? The answer is neither. So just to sort of give like a brief overview, this is a panel discussion. So I'm going to be tossing questions at our lovely panelists. We're going to be getting into their thoughts, perspectives, and experiences. A couple of key things I want to sort of just get off the top before we introduce everyone properly, including myself, because I haven't done that, I'm aware. Georgina did say questions or comments. Do please make sure the questions have a who, what, why, or a when, and a question mark at the end of them. Comments are helpful, but they just clog up chat, and that makes it much harder for me to do my job effectively. Secondly, blanket content warning. We are going to be talking about some challenges, some things that have made things harder and perhaps more difficult, leading to success. But obviously, if anything resonates with you personally, you need to take an extra minute for yourself. Do please leave the online meeting or the room. Take that moment, recompose, recenter, and then come back if you feel willing to. And thirdly, it's going to be very sort of, conversational. We know that you've sort of sent quite a few questions in. We're aware of those. Don't be afraid to sort of say things in the chat. We might not get back to those straight away, but, we'll sort of be monitoring those as we go. So, my name is Christopher Leach. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm one of the GTAs over in psychology. I'm looking at video games and student mental health. Aside from that, if you couldn't tell by this wonderful demonstration that we're giving you right now, I'm also a content creator in my spare time. So I stream on twitch.tv/Chim195 every week, and also host a podcast, Psyched to Be With You. That's Psyched to Be With You, available wherever you find your podcasts. Here's a visual representation of that on a coaster, also available to buy. Psyched to Be With You. And this is first gen HE alumni, so people that have come through Edge Hill. And first gen, you might be thinking, is this some type of Apple Watch? Is he talking about Pokemon? Is it processors? Depending on your technological background and or pop culture knowledge. The answer to all of those is sadly not correct. This refers to, often referred to as fifth, which I think is less fun to say. First in family or first within usually 2 generations back attending HE. And just broad sweepingly, this actually makes up a huge proportion of people that go to HE, higher education, in England. Usually around 68% of the first within their family to go. So it's quite an interesting topic area. I didn't realize up until being asked to do this panel that I was myself included in this demographic. And yeah, I'm really excited to bring this to you today. So again, my name is Christopher Leach. My pronouns are he, him. I'm now going to go around and ask the panel to introduce themselves with their names, gender pronouns, and what they studied at Edge Hill and when. If we'll start with Jess, please. That'd be right. You just went to take a sip of tea. Excellent time on my part already. It's excellent.
Superb, really. But sound. So hi, my name's Jess Ackles. I'm currently a GTA at Edge Hill Uni, which means that I'm doing my PhD whilst also teaching at the uni. I think the other criteria in there was what did I study? All right.
Gender pronouns and what did you study at, Jill?
So pronouns are she, her. And as of current, I have 3 degrees from Edgehill. I studied an undergrad in psychology. I studied a PGC in further education training, a master's by research in neuroscience and psychology, currently doing another teaching degree, and also my PhD.
Sorry, Georgina, hold on. What's this? I didn't sign up for this. She's still here. What's going on? I'm joking. Jess and I go way back. It's just all report. Don't worry about it. All fine. Michelle.
Is that me, Melissa?
Melissa, sorry, I can't read
That's
it.
okay.
I am genuinely blind, and I was reading my screen from afar.
That's okay. So hi, so my name's Melissa. My pronouns are she, her. So I studied at Edgehill University from 2015 to 2018 doing my undergraduate. I did PE and school sport, and then I did my master's in research from 2018 to 2019. That was looking at children's well-being and if that's impacted by the time that you're born in the year. So I was interested in that research because of summer-born babies and the links to kind of learning difficulties and autism.
That's really interesting. Also, I've just realised it's because your names are the wrong way around. It's your surname, and I misread Mitchell. So that's me. I'm also blind now, so it makes great funny games. This is how you know we're doing it live. Okay. And last but not least, I'm gonna guess it's Emma, unless that's also wrong, but we'll find out.
It is Emma. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Emma. My pronouns are she, her. And I was at Edgehill between 2015 and 2018, like Melissa. And I did primary education with modern languages with qualified teacher status. So I graduated in 2018 and went straight on to become a teacher.
There we go. So we have an excellent little pot of experiences, a cocktail of deliciousness, you might say. So I kind of want to start at the start because I think, as I kind of pointed out, I didn't even know the first gen students were a thing. Was there a point in time when you realized that this was a thing, you fitted into this demographic, and maybe what did that mean for you at the time? Melissa, we'll start with you if that's all right.
Yeah, so to be honest, my journey starting at Edgehill was a little bit turbulent. So I actually started a different university back in 2011. I went to the University of York for just short of a year. And I really, really struggled, to be honest. I don't know whether it was because I was quite young at the time or that I just wasn't ready for university. But yeah, I ended up leaving after a year and went back into full-time work for about 3 years. And it was, to be honest, through my self kind of determination, knowing what I wanted to do in the future and the fact that, you know, I was really, really, really ambitious about going to university and getting a degree and being that first person in my family to do so. A lot of my friends went to Edgehill and they seemed to be having a great time as well as studying. So I thought, yeah, why not? Let's have a look around that. And yeah, as soon as I saw it, I really, really, really loved it. So I started, like I said, in 2015 in the September. And initially I commuted, actually. I was quite fearful of moving away from home. So I'd be getting on trains for 4 hours each way. Just making sure that I was kind of keeping up with my studies, trying to work at the same time because financially I wasn't in the best position. I needed to keep my job at home whilst kind of studying. But by February, March time of my first year, that's when I ended up feeling like I did fit in. I felt that I had a lot in common with people that I went to university with, and I ended up moving. And to be honest, I've never moved back home since. So I still live just around Ormskirk area, and that's many years on.
Okay, lovely. So, I mean, as you could already tell, a lot of ground for us to cover there, and I will come back to a couple of points that we made there. Emma, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think the one of the first moments I realized that this was kind of I was a first gen student and it was going to maybe have an impact was when I started looking around universities. There were so many big words that I just didn't know what they meant. Though I was having conversations with my parents who were really supportive, but obviously didn't have that background themselves, where they were kind of saying, oh, well, you know, like, we're not sure about the finances, like, and if we are going to try and support you through this, you need to be making sure that it's going to be a degree that you're definitely going to get a job with at the end of it. And I mean, I'm no longer in teaching. That gives you a little bit of a clue for maybe later on with something. So I really ended up going through a journey that really my parents struggled with when I left university, because they didn't really understand what going to university was about, what you gained from it. They just kind of saw a very like, oh, well, you go and then you go and get this job straight after. So that was kind of all the way through. It's been a bit of a weird challenge where having to just take on what I know at kind of face value as I'm going through it, learning as I go, I think is one of the biggest challenges I faced in the moments where I was like, this is really hard and I wish I had someone who could kind of guide me through it.
This is why I love panels, because you just hear such incredible things and it just kind of does itself. Jess, what about yourself?
Really similarly to Emma as well. Applying to university, background of family who really had never been in sort of, I can't think of a better word for it, so the uni sphere. Knowing all that
Unisphere, get a copyright on that right now, someone, get that down.
Knowing all the different terminology, and you go say, oh, I'm applying to Student Finance England, and they go, okay, a bank, how much money are you going to owe these people? And it's not like that, and going through all these different things, trying to convince yourself, but also the people who really love and support you that, no, I'm brave enough to do this, I really want to do this. But apparently I got here and I never left, so something must be good.
I would be remiss to comment, given that we're all here representing Edge Hill. That's a joke. So I kind of would just like to, I want to reiterate a further point actually, because it kind of stems into this type of discussion, and I just wanted to see if it came out naturally. But it'd be very easy for this type of discussion to envelop itself in a socio-political, socioeconomic debate around things like class. Okay, now obviously this is going to be important and going to be heavily related to the conversations that we have. However, it's important for us as a panel, us on behalf of Edge Hill Careers, and also myself as a host, to ensure that we don't get into a political ramble. That is why I host a podcast, basically, totally different thing. Just another plug for myself there. Link it attached to this video. It will be. I'm also here just for levity, because it helps break up really serious discussion, whether you find me funny or not. But I just wanted to make that point purely because it is a thing that could totally distract from the incredible experiences of our panel. So I kind of want to pull on a few threads that we got through there, but I kind of would like it to go reverse and just pick up on a point you made about the physical application process to uni. And then if we could go back around, that'd be great.
Yeah, so sort of what that experience was like applying to uni.
You related that there was like some specific challenges to being a first gen HE. So what did that look like for you? Because I'm sure we all kind of know the basic. You go on the UCAS and you beep boop bop, and then you go on the student finance and you beep boop bop, and that's it. Yeah. You're done.
I think one of the biggest challenges that came out of being the first in family to go to university was that looking for sort of guidance and support, even down to the very first thing that you do, you pick your course, you see a course and say, that's it, that's what I want to do. It aligns to the things I'm passionate about. And sharing that with the people closest to me who said, yeah, no, don't have no idea what that is. Can't sort of, it's not the same level of joy or excitement felt. So I think that can be a bit of a challenge to try and explain, not only justify to yourself why you are so passionate to do this and why you are brave enough to do it, but to convey that to others.
At what point, like in your studies, did you sort of make the decision that you thought maybe this would be a good idea to go to uni? Like at what point did you begin to navigate that?
Second year of college, actually.
Okay, that's fine.
So yeah, made the decision round about then. Lots of support from very wonderful teachers that were much more knowledgeable about the uni sphere. So that was a very good experience to have that.
Okay, excellent. And as you say, it was this kind of navigation of expectation and knowledge was a particular barrier to entry?
Yeah, familiarity, I'd say, more than anything.
Familial familiarity, you might say.
Yes. Much better put, but yes.
Hey, I'm here for the puns. That's excellent. Again, more threads. I will come back to you. Let's go back around. Emma, what about your application journey? What did that look like? What did that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher when, like, right from a really young age. Like it was, you know, it's one of those cliche things where I'm like, yeah, it was a dream I had from a child. But I really did want to be a teacher. But one of the things that I struggled with was, even though I had teachers around me, was knowing the correct path to follow to get into that. It took me visiting a university to find out that actually doing a degree in education was possible. I thought I kind of had to do like English and then go on and do a PGCE. So that was just kind of what I knew about. So actually being able to explore kind of campuses and have conversations was really important. And I do feel very lucky that even though they didn't really understand, my parents did ensure that I went to open days and things like that. But yeah, it was having to kind of tackle that of actually breaking down what I wanted to do and how I was going to do it was definitely a challenge. And I think building on kind of like the application process itself, things just came as a bit of a surprise. Like I didn't know, for example, that you had to pay to submit your UCAS application, and really small things that you just don't think about until you're like, oh, that's no one's thought to tell me that. Were definitely things that kind of cropped up. That's the big one that I remember, is paying for my UCAS application and being like, can I ask my parents to pay for this? I know some schools do now pay for it to kind of reduce that barrier. But yeah, just things like that cropped up throughout the application process. And I guess through you know, kind of having to attend interviews and do different tasks, and there were so many different things that it was a challenge working out what everything was that I had to do. Definitely.
I'm going to interject an anecdote here before we get to you, Melissa, if that's all right. Just relating to like picking a course and stuff, because I did media in college. Totally synergizes with what I'm doing now, which is coincidental. But I remember applying, and I did forensic psychology and criminal justice. I remember getting an email from the university admin being like, "This course seems like really quite sciencey. Like, are you sure this is for you? Like, you know, we just want to check." And I remember that being like how do I deal with this? I don't know how to engage with university administration when, like, you know, this is it's a course that I like. It was forensic psych. So like that was a really funny moment that I very much resonated with what you had to say there, Emma. You have another point?
Yeah, I was just going to build on that and say, so you kind of mentioning about kind of media studies and things. So kind of building on my last point about thinking I had to go to university to do English and then do a PGCE, I didn't have a good idea of what was actually available at university either. I just thought it was kind of the academic subjects that were the core subjects, if you like, that were offered in school. So that was another thing that I had to navigate, was finding out that there was this many courses, and having to like work out the really niche bits of them and how they varied and how different they were to each other as well.
It's a lot of reading. It's the general thing, a lot of reading of stuff online and both in paper, as we did back in the day. To circle back around, Melissa, if you could tell us about your journey of applying to uni and what sort of influence being a first gen student had on that.
Yeah, so mine was probably a little bit different, to be honest. I really didn't know what pathway I was going to take. And it was during sixth form, my A levels, that it was more the teachers and the staff that were really encouraging of me to go to university. From a home perspective, my older sister had gone into an apprenticeship from the age of 16 and was earning money straight away. She's 6 years older than me, so they just assumed that I would take that similar path. And so when I even kind of mentioned university, it was very much like, oh, okay, this is new. And yeah, again, the whole navigation process for me was very, very difficult. So writing a personal statement, whereas I had friends that had family members that could support with that process, I was very much kind of, what is a personal statement? What do I do? How do I sell myself? It was very good that I had the teacher support, and I did have my parents' support, don't get me wrong, but it was just because they didn't come from that educational background. When it came to the open days, it was more like we were going to the cities to to see the cities rather than the university. So my mum loved shopping. So although she was really supportive, it was very much like we'd have a quick look, but it was more kind of looking at the whole place and whether it was somewhere where I could see myself living. Course-wise, I was really torn because I didn't know what I wanted to do. It was between psychology and PE teaching. And to be honest, I've made a full circle around. So I'll tell you more about that later. But yeah, it was really difficult. The student finance, I remember my parents kind of questioning, you know, why do they want my financial statements? Like, why do they want to know where our money's coming from? We're not that they couldn't or weren't going to financially support me, but realistically, I didn't have a lot of money from them that could support me. So it was very much about, you know, why do they need this? Where's it going? Where's this information going to be taken? So yeah, there were lots of questions that I had, but also that they had that I struggled to answer. So similarly to Emma, it was very much learning as I went along, and as I kind of met the hurdles, I managed them.
There is something that is like cognizantly very like scary about like handing over financial records. Like even like as an adult, you're always like, but why do you want to see 3 months bank statements? I know you're a bank, but still. I know you're HMRC, but still. Like it's just kind of funny how like that relationship with how we discuss money and finances generally kind of overlaps. I do apologize because you'll call me Kronos, but we're going to be going in chronological order of our guests' journeys. I think that's really important to help frame the context as we get to their careers now and sort of challenges, pitfalls, but then round that off to success, because it's always best to end on a positive note. So I would like to just go back to yourself, Melissa, if that's okay, because you mentioned while being a student and a sort of an inference of being first gen, that you also had to work while you were doing your degree. What was that like? What were the challenges of that? And then we'll go around and ask our other panelists.
Yeah, so when I started Edge Hill in 2015, I initially, like I said, was commuting, and that was just because I had secure employment, you know, on a weekend, and I wanted to make sure that I could financially support myself. It was really difficult, so I was getting up in the mornings at 4:30, 5. I'd walk to the train station for 40 minutes. I'd then get on 2 trains, and I'd then have another half an hour walk after that. So all in all, the commute was about 4 hours each way. But it was because I was so determined to succeed whilst kind of maintaining that financial independence as well. So yeah, initially the work side of things, once I managed to come to university at Edge Hill, I did realise there were quite a lot of opportunities locally to the university. So I managed to get an initial transfer. So I worked in Marks and Spencer's at the time. So I did get an initial transfer up to the local Ormskirk. So I ended up doing a little bit of work there. But to be honest, most of the opportunities afforded were through the actual sports and the Edge Hill kind of centre generally. So very much into sport. My background's very much sport. So I did a lot of volunteering work through my time as an undergraduate, and I managed to get paid employment through that. But I also did quite a lot of representing the universities, like student guide, student support of other students, and I managed to get employment through that as well. So I was kind of juggling quite a lot of jobs, if I'm being completely honest. On the weekends, I'd be working at Marks and Spencer's. I also worked in a bar a few nights a week. I'd then be working in the sports centre. I'd then be doing a little bit of guide work. So it was very, very hard to manage.
I am just being told to warn everyone that other supermarkets are available, and do please drink responsibly. So but just to just really dig into that a little bit,
Yeah.
like, you know, you had to work, right? That's the
Yeah.
message here. Like you could not afford, both literally and metaphorically, to not work. And did that impact like your actual relationship with your studies?
You know what? I was really good at managing my time. So it took me a long time to practice, don't get me wrong. But I was very, very good at really boundarying my time for certain places. And I knew that kind of, you know, if I had an assignment, I knew when I needed to start it and kind of that build up. It did affect me at times. So sometimes socially, I wouldn't be able to do things because I would have to prioritise work and kind of making sure that I had my own support to be able to sustain a living up here. But generally, I did manage it as well as I could, I think.
Okay, excellent. Jess, if we could go to you, like, what was your physical journey in HE like? What was your relationship with being fifth in relation to that? Did that have any impact or sort of, you know, coagulation, if you will?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really odd because we've never met each other, but super similar. So
It's almost like a panel on first gen HE alumni brings together people that are really similar.
he always points out the best things.
And often the most obvious.
Yeah, so our friends. Yeah, but really similar. Like the idea of I needed a job at the same time that I came to university. Not least for the fact that the job that I had, I'd already been working for years. I loved the people who I work with. So I wanted to keep that network as sort of a grounding thing. But also financially, financial independence the first time is a bit of a struggle for anybody, I think. Having that the power to decide things. So I commuted from home for the first few months, and not quite as many hours, but about 2 hours to get into uni to get back out, which is a commute that I still do now. So definitely Edgehill is worth it.
Get that one on the clips. Get that editing team. Get that one on the clips. We got it. We got the hot take.
Did move up to Ormskirk after a little while. That did make things a lot easier. Actually got a job with the university library, one of my favourite jobs that I've ever had. So
we love libraries on this panel.
Highly recommend the student assistant role there. And that just made everything a lot easier at the time. Things started to calm down a bit more. I was secure in the fact that I have a regular income. This is okay. I can meet the things that I need to do. And being a part of the university in both my studies and my work definitely helped me to learn more about how to study, the things that maybe were not taught at college level or at high school level, learning it from the inside out, sort of. So spending time in the library definitely helped me achieve better grades in my degrees anyway.
And to sort of just touch on the previous point I asked as well, like did having to work impact your ability and your relationship with your actual studies? I mean, obviously it's handy working in the uni, as you point out, but
overall I'd say it did get easier once I was working on the campus. I'd say it was tiring to make that commute. I'd sort of change in mindsets maybe. That's something to navigate. So particularly working at a bar, as I did over here, where I live now, very different mentality to take into work settings. I wouldn't say that it got too much in the way of my actual studies, but again, learned time management and organizational skills very quickly when you know that you have shifts coming up and you have to meet them, versus I have assignments that are due in. I need to plan in time to study, to read, to write. So I think it takes a lot of perseverance to make sure that jobs don't impact negatively on studies.
I'm gonna pick up that thread because my favorite expression today, apparently. After we've heard from Emma, and what about yourself? What was your first gen HE experience like while you were studying?
Yeah, of course. So I did, so as I mentioned, I did primary education. So I was in university a lot, in comparison to some of my friends that weren't. So I was in kind of 3 or 4 days a week, some weeks, which had obviously like a massive impact on where I could work. So I was also very lucky that I could work for the student, as a student guide and a student ambassador, and I also did a bit of student blogging as well. Because that meant I could fit the work in around my studies. And it also meant that it was all on campus. I did live on campus as well, so that kind of helped, if there was any like last minute work that I could pick up or something. In terms of it affecting my studies, I would say I tried as much as possible not to let that happen. I think though, because of the amount of work, kind of university work, that I was doing, there were times where I was like, I just need to pick up a shift, and unfortunately that means I'm going to have to miss this lecture today. Like that was just sometimes the circumstances. And with being on a teaching degree, I was also doing lots of placements, so there were particular times within the year where I just could not do any other work because I was working full-time as a trainee teacher for kind of 10 weeks at a time. So a lot of my the work that I did was actually ended up being through the summers or the holidays, so that I could kind of bulk up my funds, if you like, for ready for the term when I was then going to have to go into schools and work a full-time job, whilst also studying.
Okay, so this is gonna be a bit edgy. I'm gonna open this up to the entire panel for just anyone who wants to jump in if they would like. So do unmute your microphones, get ready. But generally, like you mentioned there, Emma, that you had to make this choice sometimes between work or a session. Now, obviously, with our cynical hats on, nowadays, if we transpose ourselves to the present day, again, I'm being Kronos, Greek god, so time, Titan specifically, Greek mythology. That's a really difficult choice, particularly when attendance is, rightly so, hyper monitored because we need to look after our students, but also students are paying so much, nowadays. The fees have gone up even since ourselves were at university undergrad level. Panel, like as a whole, like what are your experiences with having to make that choice? What was it that led to that decision making? I opened it to the floor. It's a bit edgy, but Oh.
So for me, I think that my course was quite good. So I would only really be in 3 days a week, and it definitely wouldn't be full days. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, around Christmas, the build up to Christmas, when I knew that I needed more money to save the 3-hour train journey and the 1-hour walk, I would miss lectures, and other times the trains, they just didn't come. And so it was difficult at times to actually get there on time. I think because my attitude towards my studies was always so positive, and that I was trying my very best, it never really negatively interfered, because I did try to prioritize my studies as much as I could. But when it did come to it at times, don't get me wrong, there were the odd lecture that I did have to miss. And you mentioned that the kind of the financial side, and it is right, you do pay so much money to be a student, and they want you there as well. And I remember turning up sometimes on the trains, and a train would be delayed, and I'd be due in like a practical at 9 o'clock, and I'd get there at 9:30, and the lecturer would be saying, you're half an hour late, and little did they know I'd been up since 4:30 trying to get there. So it was really difficult then as well, because from their perspective, they could have been thinking, she's just not got out of bed and she just can't be bothered. And actually, it was a real battle at times to actually get to the university. But yeah, generally, because my attitude towards my studies was always positive, I did as I could, as much as I could. I was there as much as I could possibly be. But yeah, don't get me wrong, there were times where I did potentially miss the odd lecture.
Jess.
Yeah, I've got a sort of different perspective to build on that with. Being an undergraduate, and the times that work does sort of pose a bit of an influence on studies, wholeheartedly agree that that's a lot of times that just comes down to, I have to be determined in this. I need to really manage my time well. Now, as somebody who is teaching at the university and has like classes, I wish I could go back and tell myself, just email my lecturer, that sort of thing. For those moments and those times when I did end up missing things and I felt absolutely wrought with anxiety about it. Say again, the trains didn't turn up and I thought, oh, they're going to think I'm lazy, I really wish I could just go back and say, email your lecturer, let them know what's happened. Because as somebody who teaches at the university now, it is completely fine if somebody emails me and says, my train hasn't turned up, this has happened at work, I can't get in today, or I'm going to be late. Absolutely fine. I'd rather know that, say, students are safe and okay. So I think that's potentially something definitely that I want to try and embody in my teaching, but pass on to sort of first generation students is lecturers aren't there to be shouty and say, well, you haven't been in. We want to make sure everyone's okay. So just let us know, that sort of thing.
Excellent point. Really value that perspective, because it's different when like you're on the other side of the classroom, if you will, right? Like, Emma, any other thoughts you wanted to just build on that? We kind of started with yourself making some points there.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add that I think kind of weirdly it was more towards kind of my second and third years that it became more difficult to manage that, which is difficult, right? Because that's when the work is starting to get harder. but I get kind of at university. But I think when I had to move off campus and none of my bills were included, that was when it became like I need to go to work today to make sure I can pay my electricity, which I think is something we're all feeling now, right? Anyway, but yeah, so I think if you're, if a first gen student is looking for accommodation, I would always be like, get your bills included, because that's gonna hopefully have an impact on how much you feel like you need to work as well.
So I would add in just another anecdote, that like I was like really almost like hyper conscious of financial management. So I like fully ready for you all to laugh, don't care. But I had like an Excel spreadsheet with income and expenditure in from like year one, just like student finance payments in, some formulae for subtractions and stuff. We weren't doing no concatenation or nothing dead fancy like that. This is way back when. It's me showing off Excel knowledge now. But just because like I felt like I had to be aware of it, like I would forecast like, oh well, if I go out to eat or if I go out on this night out, like what would it look like after that? And like almost like micromanaging my future self, just because they're the kind of decisions you have to make and have to have that level of awareness that is completely unseen and is unaware of by many people. So it's okay to do that. I'd advise doing it, and B, it doesn't mean you can't have no fun. You know what I mean? Just to any prospective students watching. Now, it wouldn't be a careers panel if I didn't ask the obvious question of, okay, so you've done your undergraduate degrees, you've faced some challenges and some choices there. What tools, resources, and/or information did you access, if any, in order to get that first sort of, I'm going to use the term in quotations, graduate job? I just mean by that the first job you got after you finish your degree. Other opinions may be available. Obviously, we have, in the golden age, we have such an incredible careers team. Big up Edge Hill Careers, love yous. Not to mention, obviously, online resources, things like LinkedIn. Like, I'm not razzing anyone, but someone did submit a question that was, have you all heard of LinkedIn? Which, hilarious. But resources like that, how did you all find that? What did that sort of market look like for you? Again, specifically being to first gen HE student, because the market's not been great for many years now. Let's go background. Jess, how about we start with you? That's all right. First graduate job, resources, access, information.
Well, still after uni. So picking up on that point of depends what some people classify as a graduate job. I love my job. I think it's great.
Oh, another clip there. Edit that one.
But I think that it ties back to something that we touched on at the beginning. So when those close to us say, well, what are you going to do with this degree? Like, what job can this lead it to? And although I haven't left, the opportunity to go into so many different fields has been absolutely astounding. Now that's good, because it's been amazing to know that there are so many things that I can do and I am excited about it. And don't get me wrong, as soon as I finish my PhD, world is my oyster. I have like 5 different things that I want to do, so I need to narrow them down further, knowing that I'm going to be qualified.
Don't worry about
it. Knowing that I'm going to be qualified to go forward and do them. But at the same point in time, thinking back to little 18-year-old Jess, who had just gone to university for the first time and didn't really know what Turnitin was, it can be really overwhelming as well. So up to now, I'd say my degrees have prepared me well for my current job role, but they've definitely given me a lot of skills that I am using now, and I'm very excited to go forward and use in future jobs.
As a feeder question for yourself then, Jess, because obviously you sort of stayed within the Edge Hill beautiful community that it is. What was it that drove that decision to stay as opposed to just go and get a job? What information resources did you access to do that?
When I finished my PGCE, because I want to go forward and be a teacher, wanted to teach an FE, spoke to our careers service and our Money Matters service. I think that's built in with the careers service. Sorry, the money advice team. Mentioned that I was particularly passionate about a topic, looking at dyslexic students' engagement with studying school or levels. And I was made aware that I could actually obtain funding to do a master's in that. Since I said that, I've just done a little bit of research about this, I'd love to do more. So speaking to the team really helped to gear that conversation and sort of mapped out the trajectory of where I am now. Just getting in and speaking to careers, speaking to the money advice team, and colleagues who I worked with at the library at the same time said, yeah, this is totally something that you can do. This is all the different jobs that you could go into on the basis of what you're doing right now.
We're going to throw in some buzzwords because we love those, but it's really important to relate those transferable skills. I didn't at the time doing media realize that being able to edit videos, audio, have like even a conception of what those like what video bit rates are. Everyone's mind's just gone to sleep. Would actually end up helping me when I'm doing a PhD in psychology, because being a good scientific communicator, particularly in the video games field, is hugely important. Like being able to stream and all these sorts of things are very, very you know, very, very disparate and very important. So it's really interesting how we have this development of our own transferable skills, and it's about the utilization and the framing of those. Sometimes postgraduate study is a great option for many people. I went down that path myself. I enjoyed it. It's also not a path everyone has to take. Okay, swinging back around, Melissa, what about yourself? Access to information, resources through to that first sort of job post-uni?
Yeah, so my degree, my undergraduate degree was in PE and school sport, and it was during probably my second year that I had that penny drop moment of, oh no, I don't think I want to do this. And I know that that's quite a common thing that happens. So I'd done a module which was linking to like health, and I was really interested in the mental health side. And I remember constantly thinking, what am I going to do? Because my whole degree is preparing me to go into a career of teaching, and I don't want to do that anymore. And even kind of coming to the decision of doing a master's, that was wholly supported by kind of getting advice from the university and you know, from the careers team. But subsequently just thinking about the actual job, the first job from my master's, I honestly remember applying for so many jobs, and I'd get to the interview and I wasn't getting the job, and it was really, really getting to me, to be honest. And I remember turning up to careers and being like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But I prepared with them. They do lots of kind of interview prep. They've got loads of brilliant resources online that I used. And I really do believe like everything happens for a reason. So it was maybe a few weeks after the final job interview that I'd not been successful in, that a job advertisement had gone out with the NHS, and it was a recruit to train post, which essentially means that so long as you meet kind of a certain criteria, that they fund you to train in a certain area. And so I went again to the career centre, looked online, kind of saw the requirements of the job application and the spec, what they wanted, did all my preparing for that, and I was successful in getting that post, and I've not left that post since. So what I would say is it's really normal to have setbacks as well. You know, when you do, it's never going to be smooth sailing, and you're lucky if it is smooth sailing from that undergraduate position. But my determination has got me to where I am today, and I'd say keep going. You know, the amount of times, genuinely, it must have been 7 or 8 applications that were constantly, you know, you've just missed it, you've just come second. But like I said, I do believe everything happens for a reason, and I've never been happier in what I'm doing now, which is supporting children's mental health. So yeah.
Excellent. A couple of points. I can confirm that money, advice, and careers are separate teams. Therefore, careers cannot claim any credit for the wonderful work done by money advice. However, we do have love and respect for both teams on this panel. Another sort of like quip that I'm going to sort of throw in is that there is like a formula just to applying to jobs, particularly depending on where you're looking at applying them. And it was only like once I had breached that environment, particularly say like in HE, that I was, to coin a phrase, I learned how the sausage was made, and then that is how you're able to really tick those boxes, and it makes it much easier. I also would like to point out, just again, anecdote, levity, very fun. My first graduate job, quote unquote, was a junior trainee research assistant, because one sort of like subversive kind of title wasn't enough for HR to give it a lower pay grade because budgeting. So there's that. Like being a trainee is one thing, but a junior trainee, there was no senior trainees there, I can confirm. Fun times. Emma, what about yourself? That sort of first job, what information access resources, what impact did being first gen HE have on that?
Yeah, so I as I'm going to mention again, was a primary ed student. So what that meant is that a lot of our modules, or I guess some of our sessions towards the end of my degree, were specifically focused on writing applications, kind of delivering a mini lesson and that kind of thing that you could go in and do in school. So that was really useful, and that was something that everyone kind of got as part of their degree. I will say that it was very stressful being in that kind of environment where with teaching positions you can literally find out like a year in advance that you're going to go into a job, and so all of your peers are getting jobs and you're like, when's it going to be my turn? And that can be really stressful and overwhelming, and yeah, that's difficult. I think the other thing that was a challenge was that there were a lot of, I don't know if it's because there's lots of kind of universities that offer teaching in the Northwest, but there was basically no positions available in the Northwest, and that kind of forced my hand to move back home so that I could get a teaching job back here. So yeah, I definitely feel that the support that I was offered from my lecturers was really important, and you know, when I was going to interviews and being like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, I don't know what's happening. So being able to then being able to talk that through with lecturers and being like, just given general advice and support was really helpful. As I've mentioned, I left teaching, so I had a really rough first year. I just didn't enjoy it, which I guess like Michelle said, when you kind of come to a point where you're like, sorry, not Michelle, Melissa, where you come to a point and you're like, I have poured all of my energy into this thing, what am I going to do with it? And I think, and as I've mentioned, that was the point that my parents were like, what are you doing? We agreed that you'd go to university, you'd go out and you'd get a job that was directly linked to your degree. And I think, as I've mentioned, what they didn't realize is how much university would offer me in terms of transferable skills, to use your buzzword there, and also just the experiences that I had. So as a student ambassador, I had a lot of kind of skills in talking and offering IAG sessions and things like that. So my next job actually, I ended up working for a university where I was delivering a program to first-gen pupils that were, to pupils in schools that were from backgrounds with parents that hadn't gone on to higher education, and were from particular postcodes that perhaps they were less likely to go to university. So that kind of the skills that I developed and the work that I'd done whilst at university, and the real enjoyment I got from being part of being a student ambassador and a guide, and being able to talk about my experiences at university and how much I love being there, was really great, and I really loved it. And I definitely wouldn't have got that role had it not been for having gone to university and having been a student ambassador and a student guide. So yeah, I hope that's answered the question.
Very, very much so. Fun fact about me, in a previous life, I actually worked in outreach, something I'm very passionate about. It's one of the reasons I do panels like this. So like things like IAG, information, advice and guidance, aspiration, is all very important when particularly you're engaging with school-age learners from certain postcodes. It does start, I think, that early, or it can, or it needs to, particularly when you are a first-gen HE, because you can only know what you know, and if you don't know it, you don't know it. It doesn't exist in your periphery, right? Another sort of thread I'd like to just yank on here is I'd like to go around and sort of talk about the less sort of academic and career sort of things, but the more personal development. Because this is a little bit spicy as a question, but how did you all find as people developing and being in the so varied nuclei that is uni, being first gen HE compared to the other people? Now, obviously, you all attended Edge Hill, which is in the Merseyside area, which is known for sort of being a great melting pot of experiences and diverse sort of bodies of people. But how did that affect you sort of personally growing? We touched on a little bit how work impacted your ability to socialize and things. How did you find that? Again, Jess, if we could start with you, that'd be fab.
It's actually a really interesting question. Not that the others haven't been, but that's a thinker.
Wounded.
I think
For all, it might not have. To be fair, I just posed the question.
No, it definitely did, because as soon as you said it, something clicked in my head and went, oh yeah, that happened. Socially, it was potentially the scariest, but the most enlightening experience that I'd had of my young life. And to this day, probably still one of the scariest experiences. Getting out of you know, your little postcode bubble sort of thing. Some people might be able to relate to that. I am from the Wirral, and nothing on the Wirral is really too far apart from each other, and everybody seems to know each other. So coming to Edge Hill, you know, there were people that I've never heard of your family name before, and that's really uncommon where I'm from, that you've not heard of somebody's last name before. Meeting so many new people, exhilarating in the way that this is amazing. There are so many people here. They're all so interesting. They have such different backgrounds to me. But from a first gen perspective, perhaps a little bit worrying, because they seemed to know what they were doing straight off the bat, and certain things were not clear to me. They'd never been spoken around. Where I'm from, like my close people and other students who did have older brothers and sisters, maybe parents who had gone to university, did seem to get the hang of it all immediately. So that was potentially a little bit intimidating. All worked out in the end. I'm actually still friends with a lot of people from undergrad. Lovely people.
Lovely people, good times, good stuff. Melissa, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I think that my first few months were probably hindered a little bit in the sense that I wasn't living at the university, and so I was coming in, I was doing university and I was leaving, and although I was trying to get involved as much as I could, there's a limit to when trains leave when I need to get home. So
Ain't
yeah,
that the
I
truth?
remember seeing other friendships being developed and people, you know, having a great time. And I think I only really started to kind of see my personal development when I did move. I got really, really involved in the whole kind of Edge Hill experience, in the sports side, volunteering, socially going out, meeting people, and I loved it. I mean, I used to literally not turn up to college when I had a presentation because I was so fearful of doing public speaking. And
Look at you now.
I know. But yeah, even that in itself, I mean, I remember one of my first presentations at university, and it was an awful experience, but for me, that's the biggest indicator of my growth, because actually before I went to Edge Hill, I genuinely couldn't speak in front of anybody. And, you know, during my master's year, I did a presentation of my research to a few hundred people. Regularly in my job now, I'm in schools and I'm doing assemblies. I'll sit on panels like this, and I don't have that fear anymore because I've developed that kind of resilience and that experience of doing it. So I do think that my self-belief grew significantly being around like-minded people that were really passionate and that saw that in me, that, you know, I could succeed and I could do well. And yeah, I did get that belief that I can do it. Yeah, I've had a change of career, but I can still do it. So for me, the whole environment of Edge Hill just really, really, really grew me as a person. And I still have lots of links in now, so I'll always do the open days, just because I'm so passionate about how much I developed at the university, how much I loved it. And yeah, just I got such a good experience, and I couldn't recommend it kind of more highly to anybody, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I resonate with that also, like personally. I think, like, I always like to stress, like, my students, like, there's not a safer place than in this, like, university classroom to harbor those skills, to, like, you know, have those anxieties and feelings and allow them to pass through you, wash over you, you know, because then you'll be there afterwards. And in the working world, you know, those skills will be so sharpened, and that will help separate you from other candidates, you know, things like that. So I think that's a really important thing to stress, that, you know, it's a really safe and comfy environment, you know, like, because at the end of the day, and maybe not enough students know this, or prospective students know this, but if anyone starts any shenanigans, as someone who's leading the class, I'll just tell them to get out. It's not funny to, like, make jokes or laugh at your peers or ask them silly questions. You know what I mean? It's not appropriate. You know, your learning environment. I've just gone into a rant here. I apologize. But I think, yeah, like, harboring those skills and, like, you know, the opportunities that can afford is just so exciting, and really, really awesome. Emma, what about yourself? You know, dig into this for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people say that when they move away from home for university, they develop those independent kind of skills of managing money, managing your time, really having to look after yourself and kind of force you to grow up and actually be responsible for kind of all factors. I think one of the things as that I'd kind of half expected when I got to university, I definitely heard lots about like, oh, uni students go out and drink loads and they do this and they do that. And that really wasn't me, and was actually something that I was really nervous about coming to university. And actually the things that were on offer, the social elements of it, the flat that I lived in, I found some really like-minded people who, you know, also weren't necessarily interested in drinking, or, you know, if they were going to go for a drink, it was just kind of like a cocktail and a little bit of a leisurely afternoon. And that was something that was really, really nice for me, was to come to university and realize that I could be me, and it was a brand new, fresh start. And it was exciting. I also came out just before I came to university. So I've been in my kind of tiny little village growing up, and then got to university, and was just kind of, for the first time, I think, really like authentically myself, in a variety of different ways. And that's something that I'll really take away from my experience, is that developing of my self-belief and my self-confidence in myself and who I was as a person, and in so many different kind of aspects of my life.
Get that in the Louvre. Love to see it. Art, absolutely magical. Lovely. I am conscious of time. People, audience members, if you do have any questions, thoughts, comments, I'm opening it up to all those. Do put them in chat. I'll keep an eye on those so we can integrate them as we get towards the end. I know this panel has flown by quicker than a jet onto your holiday destination of choice. I do kind of want to go around the panel though, and sort of, you know, we've talked about how incredibly successful you are despite some of these challenges and pitfalls that you've faced. But if we could just each go around and sort of say, what do you think the single biggest challenge that you overcame was? And what would one sort of piece of advice be that you would give to a prospective future learner as a first gen HE? Melissa, how about we start with you?
So sorry, can you just repeat? So the one
the one challenge that you
Yeah.
felt like the biggest challenge that you dealt with, and also
Yeah.
the one piece of advice you would give to a prospective first gen HE student. They're at my whimsy. I pick names almost at random when I ask questions.
That's
so
okay.
you know.
So for me, to be honest, it was my like mental health. So when I went to my first university, I actually left due to poor mental health, and unfortunately, I did experience not as significant, but I did struggle with my mental health at university, and it was making sure
Feelings
that
are valid.
yeah, it was making sure that I accessed the support services that were available. They do have an incredible wellbeing service that are brilliant, and I genuinely don't think that I would have got through my degree without that support. So single challenge, I'd definitely say kind of making sure that I looked after myself and got through the studies. And you said that the one thing that I feel like has got me through is definitely my resilience and determination. I think that once you have that self-belief, nothing can stop you, and it really can't. And, you know, if I would have followed, you know, what people have said in the past to me, I probably wouldn't have gone down the route that I have, but I have really believed in myself. And, you know, I did go for many jobs, and I did get setbacks, but that's really normal in life. And I think that, you know, it's not failing, it's first attempts in learning. I might have had several of those, but I ended up getting the dream
legendary
job.
artist Bob Ross would say, we don't make mistakes, we just have happy accidents.
Exactly.
And as long as you're learning, it doesn't matter.
And I've had many happy accidents, don't get me wrong, but you know what? It's led me to where I am now, and genuinely I couldn't be, you know, happier in what I do day to day. I'm really passionate about mental health, and I support children's mental health in schools. The transferable skills, we've used it loads, but genuinely, you know, an undergraduate degree in PE and school sport helped me to navigate the school systems, what they look like, what it was to work in those. And so I'm still very much drawing on a lot of things that I did learn through my undergraduate and my master's, but in a complete different context. So yeah, single challenge, and the one thing I'd say definitely is my determination to succeed.
And like a piece of advice that you'd give, or is that just like engage with your resilience?
I would just say, just always believe in yourself, and you know, you'll all have your own quote to live by, but mine is definitely everything happens for a reason. And sometimes you will just be sat there thinking, why is it always me? You know, why is it never happening for me? But I promise you one day it will. And when it does, that feeling of getting that phone call to say, you know, you've been successful, it's just I remember it. I was actually in Edge Hill car park when I got the phone call for my
The
first
place where
job,
all
and
dreams come true.
it really is. And honestly, I just sat in the car for 10 minutes. I couldn't move. So it really, really is worth it. And just don't give up on yourself, because genuinely you can do whatever you want and you can achieve what you want to.
Jess, biggest challenge and biggest piece of advice?
But honestly, going to say that the challenge is new every year. Like, have been here for a while, but the challenge is new every year. I'd say that the overall one for me particularly is the confidence aspect of it. And that's been something that's been since day one, like day one of undergraduate, all the way up to now, looking at presenting at conferences and doing very PhD geared things. That the confidence can like a dip in confidence or just low confidence can massively get in the way. It's kind of like stumbling over your own feet about the thing, because you have the skills, you have the potential, but having that oomph behind you to go, no, I am going to do it, and it's fine, and I deserve to do this, I deserve to have a chance. So I guess my piece of advice for that would be, like, yeah, of course it's okay to be scared, and you're going to be scared, but just do it anyway, because you have the opportunity to do it, and what's the point? It's your right to give it a go.
Shoot your shot, be respectful, but shoot your shot. Take that chance.
Yeah.
Because up until you throw in that application or that panel suggestion or whatever, so I'm playing to the panel here, you just never know. And Emma, what about yourself? Biggest challenge that you've faced, overcome, and biggest piece of advice?
I think biggest challenge was realizing I wanted to, feeling like anyway that I wanted to throw away all of the work that I'd done at university and go into what felt like a very different career path at the same time. It was for many reasons that I chose to do that. My mental health, my finding this kind of work-life balance is really important, and I wasn't having that with teaching, and just being okay that it's okay to recognize that you've made maybe not a mistake, because I've still learned a lot from the year that I did do teaching, and I still completely value the 3 years that I was at Edge Hill and everything that I learned. Even though that was, as I say, specifically focused on teaching, it's completely okay to decide to do something different. It's your life, and that was something I really had to overcome within myself, was feeling like I wasn't failing by doing something different. And yeah, I would never be now where I am, and I actually found out yesterday I got a promotion in my role, so thank you. So yeah, so everything that I've done has led me to where I am, and having to be okay with that was definitely a challenge that I had to overcome. But I think that my biggest piece of advice is be open to new adventures. Looking back, I would never expect to be where I am now, but by just being open to opportunities I had at university, being open to kind of different like jobs and things as they crop up, is definitely really, really important. And I think will lead you somewhere that you had no idea you were going to be, but can be a really, really positive thing. So be open to change and opportunities.
Now, very sadly, we are almost running out of time, so I'm just going to pitch my very last question to our panelists, and then I'll sort of close things down and pass over back to Georgina. But panel, Jess, we'll start with you if that's all right. But my question for yourselves is, we started at the start, we're talking about how you being first gen HE had impacted you and the relationship and dynamic with your families. How has that changed now, if at all, having gone through your educational journey?
So, as we covered at the beginning, very family was not in the uni sphere, because I've learned that I quite like that phrase, even though I made it up about half an hour ago.
Totally taking that down. It's great.
And it's sort of done a bit of a flip for my entire family, even though I was the first to go to uni in my family. The rest have sort of followed suit. So when I did my teaching degree, the college that I taught at, I obviously told my mum, like, oh, I'm teaching here. Here are some of the courses, because I think that you deserve to be able to get back into education, or you took a gap for raising me. And she has since gone to said college and is now looking at going to university herself. On the back of that, my stepdad looked at what my mother did and said, yeah, I think it's time for me to go back. I have things I want to learn about. So it's now unfortunately they're not the first gen.
What universe have you created?
I know, it's horrible. We can't be in the same club and it's all my fault. But at the same point in time, I'm sort of hoping that they've been with me whilst I've gone through the challenges. So hopefully they've seen some of the pitfalls of things that I've done. And we'll go, Jess did that and it did not work out the best for her. Let's not do that.
Imagine the paradoxy of one of your parents potentially joining Edge Hill and being in one of your own classes. Now that would be mind-bending.
Yeah, that would be something.
I also like to quote, it's a quote from Frasier, I think quoting something else, but it's a fool that doesn't learn from their own mistakes. It's an absolute wild thing that doesn't learn from the mistakes of others. So there is a piece of knowledge in there to be taken. Melissa, what about yourself? If you sort of, the biggest sort of highlight and sort of how has that changed your dynamic with your family since?
Yes, well, I'm still the only one that's been to university, but that's because I don't have a very big family, and the next in line is my little 4-year-old niece. So
never too early to start raising aspirations.
Well, that's the thing that I was going to say. I do feel like I can be a really positive advocate for change, and I feel like, future generations in my family will hopefully kind of see that I've been, and that you can do what you want, and what university is not for everyone, and that's okay as well. But actually, if that is an option and they do want to pursue that, then they can. I think that what I've learned the most is I'm so passionate about kind of what you call the underdog, but kind of I'm always repping for that person or those people. I'm proof that you might have things that are against you, but that you can succeed if you put the effort in and that you do try. And yeah, hopefully the next in line, which is my little 4-year-old niece at the moment, but hopefully in a few years to come she'll be joining the Edge Hill clan as well. So yeah, definitely advocate for change though. That'd be my one thing.
Well, they've got a really great careers team, so I'm sure she'll be right at home. And especially if she ends up doing education, I'm sure she'll have some great teachers. Emma, how about yourself? Any shift at all in that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, not again in terms of like I'm the youngest in my family, other than the next generation. So none kind of there. But I definitely think I've kind of won my parents around with the real value of higher education, and that it's not just to get you to a very specific career, and that they're kind of able to talk about my experience with others, hopefully, and the different things that I've done in a really positive way. I did convince my wife to go to university in the middle of the pandemic. So she completely, well, she'd lost her job because of the pandemic. And she was very skilled, but obviously a mature student. So I was like, you know what, why don't you go to university? That's going to be a great experience for you. And really, I'm a firm believer that higher education can offer you so many different opportunities, and really develop your skills, and provide you with support to get to the future that you really deserve. So yeah, I convinced her, and as I say, hopefully some of our, and I supported her through kind of the finance process and things, so that she technically was a first gen student, but kind of didn't, because she kind of had me going along with her. So I feel happy that I was able to support her in that way. And as I say, that my parents can also speak really positively about my experiences at university, and specifically with Edge Hill.
Well, what a beautiful sentiment to end on, that I'm going to kind of ruin now by throwing out some quotes and very whimsical things. Firstly, I want to thank obviously the careers team for hosting this panel, and for giving me the chance to sort of host it and be the person asking questions, making quips, as it were. I also want to thank our amazing panelists. absolutely incredible range of experiences, thoughts, perceptions, and insight that I don't think we could have got anywhere else apart from these incredible individuals. So join me in thanking them. Really valued your thoughts and perspectives. I feel like this is a discussion that we can have for 3 times the length over. Such is the intrigue and the development of such these incredible personal journeys. I'd like to remind, it's one of my favorite sort of psychology quibs that I'm not going to cite it because I can't remember the citation, which is terrible of me, but here we go. Is that the biggest indicator of academic performance is not flat intelligence, it is motivation. And it is true that regardless of background or any some such, by being invested and determined to do what you want, you can achieve anything, as demonstrated by our panelists here. Secondly, I think it's James Bernard Shaw, but I might be wrong. Excellence does not require perfection. That includes this panel because I've made several mistakes and oopses and oofs, but that's fine. We accept that in our stride and we all continue to be incredibly all well-rounded humans for it. So once again, thank you for joining me. Thank you to our panelists. I'll now hand back over to Georgina to do the closing sort of statements and such. But otherwise, you will now no longer have to hear my voice. Congratulations. You survived the endeavour.
Thank you, Chris, and obviously thank you for hosting our panel for us today. And a huge thank you to Mel, Jess, Emma for being on the panel today and sharing your stories with us. I'm really grateful for that. It's been so great to hear your stories and you talk about your journey from university and onwards as well. It's been great, and I hope it's been as inspiring for our attendees, and also thank you to those for attending as well. You know, it's really great to have you here and to hear the stories as well. In the careers team, we do feel like it's so important to provide an opportunity for these stories to be shared with everyone and to inspire people and build awareness and gain an insight and understanding into the unique journeys that our students and our graduates go through. And there's been some great advice on this panel all the way throughout. I know you had that top tip section at the end, which I thought was great, and some really good things came out of that. But all throughout, there was some really good advice from our panelists, kind of about engaging with support services. So like wellbeing, careers, little plug for us there. We didn't pay them to say that, I promise. And the money advice team, working with your lecturers who are actually, they're there to support you through this journey. And, people don't know what's going on unless you tell them what's going on, really. And I also thought it was really useful to have that discussion about transferable skills, the buzzword, of course, but how our panelists develop those skills and use them throughout their lives, both during and after university. I think that was really great, and it's something that we talk about a lot in careers because it is, it is so important. And your careers team, we are here at Edge Hill to support our students and our graduates for up to 3 years after you graduate. We'll support you in all things career related. We are based here in Catalyst. My role within the team is an employment advisor, and I kind of give that initial advice to students and graduates on topics like CV writing, searching for any roles, that might be part-time jobs while you're at university, as we heard our panelists, they worked throughout their time at university, or looking at those graduate roles, that first job that you go on to after finishing your undergraduate degree or even postgraduate study, and starting to think of those career plans. In my role, I also have an additional kind of side to that, where I deliver an enhanced level of support to the widening participation groups within the university, and that's kind of helping to break down any barriers when it comes to careers, which might include things like disclosing disabilities, engaging in positive action opportunities, or even just giving that little bit of extra support with any kind of careers related topics. And delivering these panels is a really important part of my role, and I hope that it's been inspiring for everyone here today, because I definitely think that it's been inspiring for me to hear the stories, and that there's so much kind of good advice that has kind of come out of this session. So obviously, just once again, a massive thank you to Jess, Mel and Emma for joining us today and sharing your stories with us. I really appreciate you kind of taking the time to join us and be involved in this panel, and also for being so open and honest about your journey. It's been fantastic to hear about kind of the journey from university and onwards, and I really appreciate that you have shared that with us today. And of course, a big thank you to Chris for hosting the event. A lot of work does go into hosting a panel like this, you know, fielding the questions, making the panelists feel so at ease. And I'm really grateful for your support for putting on today's event. Like, you know, panelists, hosts, attendees, we wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you very much. The recording is going to be available of this event. We are going to put that on our Careers YouTube channel later in the week. We'll be sending you out an email when that link is available. And we're going to put some more information in there about these support services available at Edge Hill as well, and the ones that have been mentioned today, and anything else that you might find useful going forward. So that's all from me, really. Just see if any of our panelists would like to have any final words, or our host.
I'll just say, if you like me hosting, do let them know, and then they can invite me back for more panels. Like, you know, content creator is available for paid work in all areas. And definitely check out the podcast. There's some great people on it. Some people on this panel might be on season 3 coming up next year. Just saying. Looking at Jess. So, you know, like there's all these kind of things definitely to look out for and engage with, because I myself and another panelist here, we all put a lot of ourselves doing these like extracurricular things, but it's all part of the journey to, I think, give back to the institutions and systems that have given us so much.
Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Again, big thank you to our panelists, and a big thank you to Chris as well. Take care, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully we'll see you again soon for another one of these events.
Bye, thank you.